My name is Samuel Verdeja. I served in the United States Marine Corps, and I was in country from October of '69 to October of 1970. It's difficult to say one experience, but I think that, so I like to choose an experience that was going on patrol, getting promoted immediately, almost immediately, within weeks once I arrived. And that's always stood out for me because leadership, either you get killed, you get wounded, you get medevac, or you get transferred, which is a rare. The transfer is rare. You usually either get killed or you get wounded, so you get medevac. And I remember my squad leader saying, Verdeja, one of the squad leaders said, Verdeja, yes, he says, you're now squad leader of Bravo. And it was like, so you're promoted, so you get promoted and you get really fast in Vietnam. So that stands out because once that happens, the rest is history. You develop a whole new frame of mind of leadership. Mm-hmm. And again, there's many things that happen once you take on. There's a difference between being in the squad and then the difference between the squad leader, because then you're responsible for your guys, not just the guy next to you, but all the guys, and you take that very seriously. Leading by example, and the reason being hard. You have to be really hard on particular, the weak link theory, and you have to focus on the weak link and make that this part of the strong, chain. And it's not difficult, but you get green people coming in where they're green. He's a green. You automatically focus on that green, new in country, and we were all new at one time, and had that look about us, and some longer than others. And you take that individual and you make them as strong as you or the person next to them. Yeah, and that's really the goal of a squad leader. Because when the battle, when the shit hits the fan, you need to know that you don't need to pay attention because they're doing their job, and that's what your squad leader does, is train, and it happens more often and when you least expect it. Yeah. Well, being in combat, those are regular occurrences, absolutely. But the one I like to share is that I had this person, he was green. He got a Dear John letter the night before. He had already gotten a Dear John letter, and he was even in country that long. And I coached him, tried to make him part of that strong link, and he was on board mentally. And we went out on patrol, and in fact, it was my first patrol. I've said that story before. And I gave him the usual story that was given to me about staying in line, walking the step, wherever the person in front of you steps, you step, and so on, and paying attention. I gave him all the do's and don'ts, prepared him. And we went out and he stepped on a landmine. And he had an M79, which is, I'll call it a blooper. It's a small shotgun. Open it up and you put a round and you fire it, and it goes bloop. But it's an M79. It had a whole big bag of rounds next to him. Well, he steps about that much to the right, and he took out my squad. 3 of us walked away. I put him in a chopper. And for years, maybe up to, now this was sometime 1969. Fast forwarding to modern day, I think I started eating spaghetti again without being rude, and when people, you're a guest at someone's house and you have to run to the bathroom to throw up, or you can't eat spaghetti. It took me that long, up to recent years, yeah. The thing I didn't like about being in combat was you hear the bullets and you go, is that mine? But then it hits someone else and it could have been yours. So you wonder about that. So I am diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, and the majority of that is survivor's guilt. Because I got promoted in combat and I got recognized in combat. I got a combat action medal. I survived and they didn't. So I'm diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, and the majority of that, again, it's having to live with that survivor's guilt. Yeah. Reintegration. At the time, we didn't know the word reintegration. We just came home and did whatever came natural. Went home and kind of fell into our place again. And I remember coming home and feeling good about having served my country. When I went home, or when I went to Vietnam, I still hadn't engaged with the that much with the civil rights movement or the anti-war movement, but I was engaged with racism all my life. It was a way of life. We knew that as a Mexican, as someone involved with a new generation of Mexicans, meaning engaged and involved in being verbal. So coming home, I immediately dropped my level I dropped into depression. Why? I came home to racism, I came home to the anti-war movement, and I came home to the civil rights movement. And we were told when we got off the plane, do not go near that group. They were demonstrators. And why? They're not going to hurt us. We're not afraid of them hurting you. We're afraid of you hurting them. Baby killers and, the physical throwing eggs. And, we had our encounters going on leave when I came home to San Diego. Went on leave, and I had my encounters in the bars. Oh, yeah. We took care of business. But that was what we came home to: racism, the anti-war movement, and civil rights movement. Yeah. Yes, we did our last reunion, 2017 here in Minnesota. I became a veteran about 18 years ago because I put away that veteran's chip and dealt with my diagnosis of post-traumatic stress and so on, my ups and downs. And when I became involved as a veteran, I did one thing. One of the things I did is I went and sought help at the VA. The other is I looked for my unit, and I found them, and I went to my first reunion. Eventually, I ended up being in a leadership role in my 1st Battalion, 1st Marine unit. And I hosted the reunion in Minnesota last year. We had a great turnout. And I like that because what it does for us in organizing these reunions, what it did for me, it really saves our lives. Because we have that, depression and things happen that beyond our control. And that's the demon that we refer to, post-traumatic stress. So when I brought the reunion here to Minnesota, we had a maximum turnout, regenerated energy, and people realized that we don't necessarily live in a cold tundra way up north, and we actually are very active. We have the Vietnam War memorials at the state capitol. We have many veterans, particularly over 500 Marines that served in Vietnam, and I was able to demonstrate to our unit that we in the Midwest in Minnesota also did our part in serving and protecting our country. So that reunion for us is very healthy. The next one, of course, we're going to San Diego, but it's increasing in numbers now. And I say that lightly because our 1st Battalion, 1st Marine, we're talking about thousands and thousands of Marines that served in Vietnam. They belong to that unit. We're dwindling to hundreds. We are a dying breed, so it's important for us to keep in contact with each other. Because one day, I am 69 years old. I'm one of the youngest. I served in 69, 70. There are veterans that served beginning in 65 and also served in covert operations that we are not supposed to be in Vietnam. Looking at the Vietnam series, that we were in Vietnam before the late 50s, training, preparing for the war. Absolutely. And that was another thing coming home. We were angry once we found out why we went to Vietnam, particularly now in modern day America. After watching that series, I was really upset. It took me back to Vietnam. It took me back to that feeling, that anxiety, that adrenaline of being in country. It took me back of seeing people die, and it took me back to a time that I was also proud to be. Again, I went to Vietnam as a Marine. I did my job, and I did it well. And I was proud some of the things I did, I have forgiven myself for, but I was proud that I went and did my job for my country. So that brought me back, the going to wars. And being a panel member also gave me the opportunity to not only to look at other wars, but look at what America is going through as a country. And there's really not much difference. We're still being lied to by the government about why we're in war. It's still a get-rich scheme, and the people that suffer are the poor Americans, and particularly the people of color, if you look at the statistics. So it really brought a lot of anxieties back, and it took me back to being, had I not been a panel member, and I did this, I actually went after the film was over, before I got onto the panel, the stage, I went and washed my face. I was literally crying. I was crying with what I call veterans tears. I ran into a few other guys that we were feeling that re-engagement of being in Vietnam again. Yeah. I can't think of his name, but he was talking about when he engaged in combat with one of the veterans that had a grenade, or one of the gooks had a grenade. Yes, had a grenade. Yeah. And I didn't necessarily agree with him, but although I understand what he did, because I wouldn't hesitate it. That trigger would have been squeezed immediately, realizing he was a gook, and I wouldn't say don't throw it, because I knew he was going to throw it. I related to that. And so when I talked to some of the other veterans, they go, "You squeeze the trigger. Shoot first and ask questions later. There's no question about that. Why do you even think about hesitating? Because you know damn well he's going to shoot you, or in this case, throw the grenade." Yeah. So that was one that stood out, because in combat, and this is what you teach your guys: do not hesitate. You kill whatever. And there are people there that got killed because they hesitated. I'm talking about Marines. They hesitated. And that's the way I walked away with, in that you just don't hesitate. We went there to do our job. We went there to kill people. We were trained to kill, and we were the best. And there's no reason to hesitate. You do your job. And I came home, did my job feeling well. And again, I alluded to earlier what I came home to. Not a very pleasant feeling. So it brought back memories for me, in not only being in Vietnam, but coming home. So although it was going to war, it was about going to war, but it was also about coming home. Coming home from combat, any combat soldier coming home, it's very lonely. You get depressed about not having it. This is why the reunions and the camaraderie and the brotherhood and the love that we talk about is very, very important for us to connect, stay connected, because we're lonely. People like you, civilians, you don't know how to talk to people like me. You don't know how to have a conversation. You hesitate. So from what I'm doing is very, very healthy for me, but it's also healthy for those that are never been to war, have never been in the military, to understand that it's okay to talk to us. But you just need to figure out how to do that, because every scenario is different. So my message to civilians is that you, in this film really, you need to understand what we went through and figure out how to have conversations with us. So the Going to War film is very, very important for, and I'm a policy and education. I alluded to, I'm on the board of trustees for Metropolitan State University, so I have that. I'm not a professor and a teacher, but I have that academic frame of mind of making change in the community. And for me, this belongs into an institutional setting that teaches young people who are far removed from war. Not that they may not be in the future, but they're just coming out of high school and college, they're removed from the military, or they're recently in the military. This really is an educational tool that belongs in an institutional setting that helps young people how to look at veterans, not to shy away from us, not to be intimidated by us, and be able to develop conversations and dialogue.